This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 70. Corey Eulas. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 70 of Experts in the Wire. My guest and I today, we go not way back, but 5 or 6 years ago back, which you will hear about later, but he reached out to me last October offering to be a guest. I actually said no at first. We have a lot of inquiries. We get the queue gets filled up very quickly. Even right now, there's a long wait. But then he reached out again, and I became very intrigued. And this is why. He said in his email, we deal with several 10 million plus traffic sites. Most of our clients are 100,000 plus pages. We do big SEO, but a more boutique version of it. And that really piqued my interest. I wanted to find out exactly how they're landing jobs working for clients like Casper, World Market, Genius, Lending Tree. And I also want to know what kinds of things they're doing to move the SEO needle for those clients. So before I bring in my guest, quick announcement. We have finally brought on some sponsors for this show. Now, I didn't reach out to these people. It was never my plan to go seeking out sponsors, but they came to us. They see that the audience is growing, that you, the listener, is really paying attention, that you're engaged, that you're liking the content, the interviews with guests like Corey. So this means you are guaranteed to continue to get this show for free, and we're only going to continue to expand it to bring you the best audio SEO content out there. And that is truly my goal. And in fact, Corey, as you know, you're sitting there patiently waiting. We actually started this interview last week or 2 weeks ago. And I stopped it about 15 minutes in. I said, you know what? Our Skype connection is not quite there. And because we have sponsors now, that has made me really raise my standards to make this show absolutely as good as possible. So thank you to BuzzSumo and Local Visibility System, who you will hear more about later on. But first, Corey, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, Dan. How are you?
I am excellent. Can you tell I'm very excited that we've got sponsors and we've got the audio set up and we're really trying to raise the level of what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations. Sponsors are great. And for you, it's just the next level. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's talk about you and your background first before we get into the SEO and the aging and stuff. The SEO work for the different clients you have. What do you consider your core skill set? Is it link building? Is it technical? Is it keyword research, content? Is it all of the above? What do you consider to be your core skills?
Yeah, so I would say just being an SEO for over 10 years, I'd say all of the above. Very fluent in all of the different aspects of SEO. But as you mentioned during the intro, a lot of the work that we're doing is coming in for big SEO. So big sites, technical, and then also sites that have a ton of traffic and a ton of moving parts, and they need somebody to come in there and dive into the weeds, and that's what we do.
Why did you start your own agency? I know you worked in-house at ZocDoc and a few other places. Why start your own agency and go that direction?
I think probably like a lot of the other folks who started an agency, they saw a need in the market. I feel comfortable in the sense that I could be gainfully employed as running my own business and have a really high quality of life, be my own boss, work with clients that really appreciate the type of work that I do. And I get to work on a lot of interesting projects simultaneously. So for all of those reasons, it just makes sense.
When you were in-house, did you find yourself getting, maybe for lack of a better word, a little bored or a little wanting other businesses and situations? Did it get a little stale after a while?
Yeah, I think and I'm sure you faced it as well, working with clients, is sometimes you're focusing so much on advocating for SEO that you're not even doing SEO. So I love the fact that when I get to work with clients, I'm working with clients who are already bought in, right? They've identified the need and they bring in somebody from the outside to accelerate the process. So yeah, it's a lot more fun when you come in and everyone appreciates it.
In your Twitter bio, it says, we do marketing, but mostly SEO. I'm curious, is there a particular reason why you angled it in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an SEO. That's the type of person that I am, and that's the type of inbound leads that we're getting is generally focused around SEO. I think I'm known as the quote unquote SEO guy more often than not. But I think a lot of people probably weren't aware that I've spent a good portion of my career doing performance marketing and a lot of other experimental marketing, testing, spending a lot of time in analytics. So we are capable of doing a lot more than SEO. And I think for especially the people listening, they realize that SEO touches so many different parts of businesses. So we are more fluent and more broad than just an SEO agency. But at the end of the day, we always fall back on SEO as being our core part of our business.
What is an SEO type? You mentioned a second ago that you as a person, you are an SEO. That's your identity. So what defines somebody in your mind as being that, an SEO?
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
I can jump in. I mean, I know I'm bringing this up. I'm asking you this very off the cuff, but I always think it's somebody that's right brain, left brain, right? Analytical and art, science and creativity. That's always been my answer. Maybe that gives you a little bit of something to springboard off of, but that's what I typically think of as an SEO, as somebody that's kind of whole brained and approaches it from both directions.
Yeah, I think it's somebody who can wear many hats, somebody who's comfortable just doing so many things at once, somebody who is able to bring a lot of people together, who can come up with creative ideas and compromises and mediate whenever there's kind of conflict internally. And I think also, SEOs are a little crazy. We generally are people who have built our own sites. We've tinkered on our own projects. We've either started an affiliate site or we've run ad campaigns as a test. Or I think we're experimenters, and I think that's what's so fun when you sit around a table full of SEOs. We come from so many different backgrounds and schools and locations, geography, but we all have that common kind of excitement for it. Because SEO is ever changing, we have to be on top of it, and I think that's what makes it fun. I mean, we're all different ages and types, and I think I fit into that world. So
there's also a little bit of an underdog tone, I think, to being an SEO, and oftentimes, and you hear at conferences, everyone wants to have the seat at the table with the higher level people, the VP of marketing and everything. But at the same time, do you feel like there's a little bit of that underdog element to SEO that would be a little sad to lose?
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely an underdog element. There's it's always a black box. Whenever you're speaking within an organization, you're speaking to leadership, they don't understand it. And not to tie it back to the business that I'm building, which is we're trying to kind of break the mold of being that black box and offer full transparency and kind of show real examples of how we've been able to transform businesses and leverage SEO as a meaningful tactic that I think gets brought up as often as now paid search or content marketing or social media or even email marketing, which are where a lot of the conversations are gravitate towards.
Before we get to chatting about these clients that you're landing and the SEO work you're doing for them, just to set the stage for what size is the company, who's involved with the company with you right now? Is it just you? Is it a group of people? What's kind of the status there?
Yeah, so right now we're a team of 5. But mostly running the day-to-day and interacting with clients is my business partner and I. So we're very much so a boutique company. We're very small. We're all involved day-to-day in all the different types of clients. We're all running meetings, doing fulfillment, crawling sites, doing keyword research. I mean, we're all in the weeds every day. So that's the exciting part of being small.
Do you envision your company staying small or potentially getting bigger at some point?
Well, it's exciting that it could go either way. I like that.
And you don't know.
I'm not cornered into one way or the other. I'd say personally, and especially working at a large company, I worked at Intuit, and then before that I worked at ZocDoc. And being pretty early at ZocDoc, I loved the small aspect of the team. I loved the internal debates that were really healthy, and I loved challenging each other. So I love that smaller group. I think you can get your hands in a lot of different things a lot easier, and you stay out of that. What is it? When things get corporate, right? The quote unquote corporate,
the red tape.
I want to, I want to stay away from that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to get stuck in that day to day running more of the mechanics and operations and stop doing the thing that I love doing, which is
the craft,
SEO, and helping clients grow. Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about these clients. As I read, you have an impressive client list: Casper, World Market, Genius.com. Can you tell me, maybe just choosing one of those out, if there's a nice anecdote or story, how are you landing such nice, big clients like that?
Yeah, I mean, these clients are, they're awesome. They're a ton of fun. They're growing. And the way that they kind of, the way I get introduced is sometimes it's an introduction, but I think to your point, a cool story is the Genius.com story, which is those guys got a lot of press for some SEO that wasn't necessarily.
We can just come out and say black. It was a black hat?
I guess so. Technically black hat. It was against Google's terms of service.
It's okay. Right? There were articles about it. Yep.
Yeah. And so there's a ton of news about it. They were first page of Hacker News, and I saw that they were doing, they were requesting links in a way that Google wasn't looking for. So as a result of that, I looked at their website, which was massive, super complex, tons of different moving parts. And I looked at their site versus a lot of the other lyric site out there. And I thought Genius.com they're just crushing it. They're so much better than their competition. And I felt that they were focused on the wrong thing. And I hate to be like Matt Cutts-esque about it, meaning like, if you focus on content, the links will come.
Yeah.
But I reached out to all of the founders. I emailed every different type of email of every founder's name, first initial, last name. And I just emailed like 30 different kind of variations of their possible emails. And I was really candid, and I said, hey guys, I think you're focusing on the wrong thing. When you guys work through this penalty that you have, feel free to reach out, and I'll see if I can help you out. And as a result of that, I got to work on a few projects with them, and they were a great group and really receptive of SEO. And I think there's a couple articles still out there that talk about their position on SEO and how to identify bad links and good links, because I think the way they got out of their penalty was leveraging the disavow file. But working in a team like that and getting a client by just doing cold outreach is incredible, and it's fantastic for not only your professional growth, but also just seeing different SEO challenges that companies are facing.
I think the difference with that cold outreach is they had a specific problem that put them on the radar. So it's not like, I'm assuming you're not out there just cold outreaching like thousands of companies. It was probably a very specific opportunity that you saw. So it's very custom. Now I want to ask, you reach out to them. I imagine they write back. Maybe there's some discussion. How does it work from there for you and your company, either with Genius or any clients in general? Do they request a proposal? Do you just do a handshake with them? How does turning that email into them actually being a paying client work for you?
I would say since the time I worked with Genius, which was a number of years ago, versus today, I would say I've matured a lot in that process. I think I've explored and experimented. Like, we go back to saying the type of personality of an SEO. We're tinkers, we experiment. So I've experimented with what is the best process for the customer, but also the easiest process for me in terms of commitment. And so the way I've been working towards having a really systemized process is we've moved towards a very formal proposal of, hey, here's the type of work that we've done. Here's examples of reporting. Here's examples of actual audit. Here's our standard pricing that we think majority of our clients fit into. And so we build that model for the customer. And obviously it's tailored, up or down, depending on where the client falls in the complexity. But I would say we're continuing to optimize that process. By no means do I think I'm going to be anywhere near where I am today in a year, right? No, just as a year ago, I wasn't anywhere where I am today.
Do you find that you have to, and I'm asking these a little bit for myself as well as the listeners out there, because I'm in a very similar situation, although I'm more of a solo consultant, but I am trying to land SEO clients. Do you find these official proposals to be a necessary element of that, of actually getting them as a client? Is that your main motivation for doing that? Or is it more to set up the work and the expectations in a way that when they sign on with you, that they have a clear path and expectation for what the work actually is?
Yes, I think it's obviously always a little different. But what I found to be most interesting through my process of experimenting is oftentimes the proposal isn't for the person you're talking to. It's for that person to get buy-in, whether it's from their boss or their team members. And it's almost a formality. Like it doesn't look as professional or as polished, especially if you're going up against other agencies who do have that process down pat. I mean, there's people, I've seen some proposal decks that are super slick, high fidelity, testimonials, and it just looks really, really nice. But at the end of the day, I think it doesn't come down to like who puts together the best proposal, but who's going to offer the most for the customer. So for me, we do it as a formality, kind of checking the box. Whereas I don't necessarily think it's the thing that closes the deal.
Interesting. And it is kind of like the help me help you sort of thing, where like you're trying to help the person sell you to their higher person. One last question about that. How much time generally are you spending on these? And I know it varies, but do you have a rough idea of like an average? Are we talking, 2 hours, 5 hours? What's sort of your commitment time-wise to doing these?
Yeah, I would say I commit more time I'll commit more time to a client that I get really excited about. So think like Casper, I was blown away by the business model and the team. And when those types of things excite you, sometimes you have a blind spot of how much time you're actually spending and you go all in, right? Like I'm already crawling the site, I'm finding errors, I'm doing competitive analysis, and I'm like, whoa, we didn't even sign a deal yet. So for me, I probably say I overinvest now. But I think I'm still in the honeymoon stage of my business. So I get really excited about kind of every inbound request that I get. Even if people email me and I kind of know that they're likely not going to be a client of ours, I still invest the time. I think there's value in doing that. So I'd say if I had to put a number on it, I'm investing 3 to 4 hours per inbound, which is a lot. Frankly, it's a lot.
It is. That's time taken away from client work or other ways to grow the business. I do have one small, not confession, but something you might find interesting. So before I knew you were working with Casper, I was in a mode a few months ago where I was going to maybe try to reach out to some companies. And the way I was prospecting this was, and anybody out there listening could do this, and I think it's, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think it's a little clever, is I went to SEMrush. And they have a part where you can look at the most trafficked sites on the entire web by organic or by paid. So I went to what are the companies that are spending the most on paid and getting the most paid traffic. I know they have budgets, but then diving in and looking at how well is their blog doing at driving organic traffic. And then that to me was what I was looking for. Who's spending a ton on PPC, but not driving traffic successfully to their blog. And I came upon Casper and some other companies that fit that sort of area. And so had I followed through with that, I would have reached out to Casper, but I'm glad I didn't because they're in good hands with you.
Great.
So I think anybody out there can use that tip if they're looking for companies to reach out to. So let's get to doing the actual SEO. I'm literally going to dive into a bunch of points that you sent me in your emails as some of the starting points for these conversations. So the first one is you said, we're big on experiments for clients, measurement. How do we know we're headed in the right direction, and planning? So I agree. The measurement stuff's very cool. you said that you are building custom dashboards with Clipfolio and using the GetStat API and pulling in the Search Console API. And you're saying it's not hard to do. Can you walk me through this a little bit? Because I'm going to admit that I'm a little beginnerish when it comes to these dashboards. So talk me through these dashboards that you're building.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we find that a lot of our customers or even prospects, we talk to them and we say, well, what are you currently looking at now to measure SEO performance? And they're looking at Moz or BrightEdge, SEMrush, Google Analytics, Search Console, and they kind of have all of these different data sources. But in reality, they're not actually logging into all of them all that frequently. They might be getting some emails. One person might be looking at one tool and another tool. So what we found is, well, why don't we look for a piece of software out there that makes it a little bit easier to collect all that data in one source? So that way you can identify things that aren't working or things that are working that you can kind of double click on and experiment even more on. But so what we did was we leveraged the Clipfolio tool, and I would say it's actually pretty good. I mean, even Rand has a clip. Basically, it's like a preset dashboard, a marketer's dashboard, and you can leverage that. I think it's probably Rand's a little bit older, but pulling in data through a bunch of providers is actually not all that complicated. And even if, so let's say we want to just go the most basic route of, you know what, APIs scare me. I don't want to play with APIs. It confuses me. You could even use any ranking provider and paste it into Google Sheets, and you can pull in Google Sheets data directly into Clipfolio. So it's a way to visualize that information. I think less about the mechanics of how it works, but the mechanics of, or the operations of having one centralized source to look at all of your information. Think top of funnel of rankings and impressions as a means of awareness, and then somewhere to look at for clicks. So you think rankings is GetStat, impressions is Search Console, then clicks is Google Analytics.
Just
then
going
if you
down
have a
the
goal
funnel.
set up and just keep going all the way down. And if you can have one place to look at that information, even if you did one landing page that was really important, you're 20 steps ahead of where you were yesterday. And that's important.
And do you have a rough idea of what I imagine it costs money for Clipfolio. Do you know what the cost of that is? Is it super expensive? Is it like hundreds a month, or is it more like a $80 a month type of thing or something?
We're running 20 dashboards right now in Clipfolio, and I think our monthly fee is $600.
Oh wow, okay. So
I'd say relatively inexpensive. And I bet you it's cheaper if you're just doing one dashboard.
Yeah, and I think, even myself, when I hear API and like these fancy terms, I do get a little scared as well. So it's good to hear that there's user-friendly ways to kind of do that. I also want to ask, like, what are some of these experiments that you're running for clients that you're using Clipfolio to visualize and analyze?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is validate tactics that are going to work for a client in the most simplest way of, let's just give a recent example of what we did was we ran a number of AdWords campaigns where we modified their title tag. The same words in the title tag. Obviously, there's different character limits. But what we did was the first line, second line in AdWords. And what we tried to do was find out the terms that were piquing the customer's interest, that had the highest CTR in AdWords, but also retaining the same kind of spirit of what you're trying to accomplish on the SEO side and the title tag. Run that test in AdWords, identify which ones had the highest click-through rate, and then bring that over to the title tag of the site, and then monitor the performance of that page. And we look at the performance of a page year over year to tease out seasonality. We're also looking at month over month to kind of ensure that we're not seeing huge dips relative to the whole site. And we're also looking at performance and rankings, right? So all in one place, you have one place to visualize it. And another test could be increasing the number of internal links, modifying the anchor text, finding pages that you don't think are necessarily all that unique, and canonicling them to a specific target page that you're looking for, and saying, you know what, this content shares a lot of the same content of this target page that we think is the most meaningful for our business, has high conversion rates. If you start making all of those experiments and start implementing them, the dashboard's a great way to see what's working and what's not working visually. And that I think it's great to speak to when you're talking to a client. You pull up the dashboard and it's kind of one source of truth. We're not looking at a different data set than they're looking at. We just pull it up and we all talk through it together.
One thing that jumped out at me, and maybe the listeners, is we're talking about SEO, and then you brought up AdWords and running PPC tests. So how does that tie into SEO? Go a little deeper into that for some of the listeners that maybe have not done this sort of testing yet.
I mean, a searcher is a searcher. So you think about the target consumer that you're going after for a particular term. Let's say we're targeting headphones, right? So if you're targeting headphones, let's just say, generally speaking, 30% of the consumers are going to click on AdWords. And now in AdWords is very, very competitive because there's so many other competitors. And so when you think about the search results page, what is drawing in the customer's eye? What are the terms that are drawing in the customer's eye? If you can experiment in AdWords with different words that are drawing the customer's attention, you could leverage those same exact words in your title tag. So when I think about title tags, what I always speak to clients about, or even prospective customers about, is I want to pique a customer's interest. And there's a number of ways to do that. I can be controversial, like don't buy that one, buy this one, or I could do something about I could FOMO, right? So fear of missing out, like last minute deal or urgent. Yeah. And you can also be funny. If you're witty or funny or charming, and then you can also do something that's a little bit on brand or social proof. Hundreds of people like this. Push your reviews, push your star count, things like that.
So are you, at your company, are you only running PPC for testing, or are you actually doing ad campaigns for clients too?
We we have the capability of doing it, but at the moment we're not doing it. We really want to be focused on driving organic growth and then also supporting overall marketing strategy. Frankly, I think it comes down to a resourcing issue. We just don't have the time. I mean, I think clients demand daily, almost hourly attention to their AdWords campaigns, and there's a lot of liability if you're not performing.
Yes,
and I would hate to be not doing as best as I can for a client. And I think there's a lot of people out there who do a really good job at it. So yeah. I defer to the experts there at sometimes.
Yeah, and part of that was to clarify for the listeners. So if somebody out there is doing SEO or they're an SEO consultant, I don't want them to be thinking, oh, well, should I be running PPC campaigns as well? I want to clarify it's for these testing purposes, which are really smart to be doing. So I want to ask a little technical question here. You mentioned in an email that you've been using Screaming Frog Log File Analyzer. Can you talk about what you've been doing with this new feature in Screaming Frog with the Log File Analyzer tool that they have?
Yeah, it's an awesome tool. So basically, you can take the log file from the server and just drag and drop it right into the tool. It has some really neat visualizations. What you're doing is you're isolating the visits to the site from Googlebot. And what you're doing is you're looking at how often, so think about it this way. If you're going to Google Search Console and you're looking at the stats, the crawl stats, what you're seeing is an aggregate of how often Google's coming to the site, an aggregate of downloading, but you want to see more. And this tool offers that and provides you that perspective. What we find is if Google's spending time on pages that don't matter or are low value to the client. So for example, maybe they're spending a ton of time on the tag pages or pagination, and they're just going deep and spending the majority of their crawl time on those pages. They're not visiting the new content or the most valuable content, and they're not observing a lot of the internal links pointing to those pages. So we leverage the tool to really quickly parse and understand the number of events. So basically, how often is Google hitting a page? We also identify the response code. So if they're hitting a ton of 404s that maybe Googlebot isn't surfacing in, or Google isn't surfacing in Search Console, or 301s that's not being surfaced. And we can also, as you know, Search Console is a few days outdated. So if you're pushing something to production, especially if you're doing something that's pretty complex, like a 100,000 plus site, a lot of those issues aren't going to get surfaced really quickly. So you can leverage Log File Analyzer. And even some cool things that you can do with the tool is if you want to look at a server log, you can see who's spoofing Googlebot. Like if somebody's coming to the site and pretending to be Googlebot, or you can also look to see if somebody's hitting your site. So if you're noticing your site's getting scraped a lot, you could see what IP address is hitting it as frequently, and you can start blocking IP addresses. So, I mean, there's just a lot of really good value in that tool, and it's pretty darn easy. So if you download the tool, if you've never used it before, download it. It comes with a sample log file. So you can just drag and drop a sample log file, and you can play with the data that way.
How does one get that log file? Are you just saying to the client's developer, hey, we need a log file, and then they go get it for you? Or do you know a little bit more about how like somebody can actually get their log file?
Yeah, so we're asking for the request directly from the developer. Oftentimes they might be using a third party to store the log files. And then even recently, and I'm not as super technical as the developer side, but the guys over at Screaming Frog, they were able to add a new feature that allows you to add server logs directly from AWS.
Oh,
so
that's
the
nice.
web host is AWS. It's another log file that you can paste in there. So the more universal that information it'll be easier for you to paste it directly in there. Years ago, we used to parse it ourselves. I mean, a lot of folks, if they're interested in looking at it, like Richard Baxter wrote a good guide on how to actually look at a log file. I think a number of other people, maybe Distill, did as well.
Yeah, we had Vanessa Fox in the show lately. We talked all about Google crawl budget, which is really crawl rate limit, which Google talked about. And then Bill Sebald a few months ago talked about log file analysis as well on this show. Corey, one thing I want to ask you is we see Google make these statements all the time. Like just today or yesterday, this thing came out on, I saw Barry Schwartz tweeting it. Google crawls your important pages before 404s. Like it's this big headline, right? Like they say one thing. So Google says that they're going to crawl your important pages first and then crawl your 404s after. And where this came from was you might see old URLs pop up in the errors report in Search Console that don't exist anymore, or they haven't crawled for a long time. But in reality, I see, and this is what I want your take on, I see Google not always doing that. I see them crawling 404s sometimes more often than important pages as well. So are you seeing this sort of separation between what Google says and then what actually they do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Google is talking about averages, right? The average site. And if you look at the average site out there, most of the time on average, people aren't doing SEO. So I think on the sites that we're working on personally, and then also I think a lot of SEOs out there, I think we're the exception. I mean, we're doing a lot of the things that Google is looking for. Our sites are a lot different. Our sites are complex. We have JavaScript. We have a ton of different elements on the site that Google's looking for. We're embedding schema. We're optimizing we're optimizing our anchor text and our internal linking. Absolutely, the things that we're seeing are often not what I'm seeing on the headlines of the SEO news. I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of the volatility of these updates that Google never confirms nor denies. All that stuff to me is great information as maybe I should just keep my eye out for it, but I don't use it as truth, frankly.
Yeah, I typically see things in reality happening very differently than what Google says. So, Corey, one thing I know about you is throughout the years, occasionally if I've tweeted asking about like how to do something or like if anybody knows of a certain tool, occasionally you've written back. Like it occurs to me that you sort of have a library in your head of a lot of tools and like you seem to have fun kind of playing with tools and piecing them together. Is that one Moz post you did like years ago, I think, where it was something maybe having to do with keyword research. I forget it now, but I'll put in the show notes where you were talking about using all these tools together in conjunction. Are there any other favorite tools that come top of mind to you right now that you're just really liking?
Yeah, so I think I want to make sure I get the the name right. Hold on one second.
And I'm setting you up for this because it's going to be hopefully my clever segue into the first sponsor, which is BuzzSumo, which is a tool that I love, which we can chat about in just a moment.
Sure. I'd say the tools that, I'm using most often, Ahrefs without a doubt. I think for me, it's a great UI. I think they have a really big index. So it allows me to quickly access link data. I think their keyword tool is really helpful. The keyword difficulty built into the tool makes it just a breeze, frankly, on the keyword research and then also on the link building side. But I think the most excited I am about a tool coming out is, I'm not sure if you know Patrick Hathaway. He has a tool called Sitebulb, which is, and I was speaking so highly about Screaming Frog, but Sitebulb is another crawler tool out there. And I think he's doing a lot of great things. I was lucky enough to be part of the beta testing. And I probably owe him some more feedback. So after this, I'll send him a note. But yeah, I really like Patrick's tool, Sitebulb, and then also his other tool, URL Profiler, which is awesome. There's no way to say how awesome that tool is and useful, but.
Is that the only tool you know of that will grab whether or not a page is indexed in bulk?
Yeah, we've had a number of issues with that, and it's not Patrick's tool. It's the
Google doesn't like that, do they?
Yeah, Google hates it.
Because Bill Sebald in Greenlane built something like that, and then they yelled at him about it.
Yeah, he found like a new parameter that he can like mess with, which is cool. I think maybe he's using an API. I'm not sure, but. Yeah, I've used Bill Sebald tools before, and I've used Patrick's. It's hard for us to figure out indexation, but the one trick that we've been looking at is, especially for sites that are high volume, is we'll take traffic for the past 7 days, and we'll basically take all the URLs in the sitemap, and then we'll look at Google Analytics and say, okay, show me every page that's received traffic from organic in the past 7 days, and that will shorten our list. Right. So we know that if the page received traffic, obviously it's indexed. So then we shorten the list.
Or even impressions. Impressions is good too, because maybe they didn't get any clicks. So I wanted to ask, as I bring in the first sponsor here, BuzzSumo, do you or have you used or played around with BuzzSumo?
Yeah, I have.
Are there any particular features that you like? And obviously I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. And so if somebody doesn't like a tool, that might make them feel awkward because they are our sponsor. But, Henley's great. We've emailed and, he just basically said, talk about BuzzSumo however you want. And I love the tool. I love their new tool, Bloomberry. So if you don't have anything top of mind that comes to it, I'll do my little spiel on BuzzSumo. But I just wanted to see first if you had any ways that you like to use BuzzSumo.
Yeah, I love throwing in a keyword or a domain and just seeing social engagement on the fly, right? So I don't need to scrape the site. I don't need to really do much. I could just punch in a keyword and I can see what are the topics that are getting the most interest. Candidly, I'm not a paid subscriber of the tool. We're definitely biased towards the technical side versus the content marketing side, but we do encourage content teams to leverage tools like BuzzSumo, as we suggest BuzzSumo because it's so easy. That's the whole point of this, is you want a tool to be easy.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Corey, and you're helping me sell it a little bit because I'm thinking back now. Before BuzzSumo, there wasn't a tool that made it that easy to see what content went viral or like had the most social shares or engagement. And then you can click right in, you can see all the actual individual people that have shared that piece of content, depending upon what network it is. And that's a great way to develop maybe an influencer plan or an outreach plan as well. You can see like the actual people that have shared that piece of content. It's a great way to match up. So, okay, like I'm writing something about men's shoes. I want to find people that love basketball because I'm trying to sell men's sneakers or promote that. And then you can see all the people that are interested in that topic in BuzzSumo. Henley and the team there has nicely given me a discount code, Dan Shore, that's DANSHURE. You get 30% off any BuzzSumo plan for 3 months. So that's like a really awesome discount. So for anybody out there that wants to give them a try, Dan Shore, no spaces, is the discount code at buzzsumo.com. So Corey, in your email, you said that you're also doing a lot with growth and experimental things when it comes to SEO, and you particularly called out Q&A work. So do you mean like sites like Quora and forums and things like that?
Yeah, I think leveraging keyword phrases that users are naturally searching for just makes total sense. It's low competition. It has high engagement rates. People are looking for it. And it's a great way to introduce the brand. And it's also a way to improve the overall relevancy of the site and get users engaged. So we're seeing a lot of success with Q&A content.
And I do want to dive into these specifics. By the way, I didn't even realize, so BuzzSumo's new tool, Bloomberry, have you checked it out? It's gonna blow your mind for this Q&A work. You type in a keyword and it gives you like hundreds of forum questions off of that keyword, but it also pulls in co-occurring keywords as well. So just yesterday I typed flowers and I got seeds, bees, trees, garden, wedding. Like the tool is phenomenal. So that's one I would check out, Corey, if I were you. But so tell me what you're doing with the Q&A work. Are you having people go in and like answer questions around your client's topic? What are some of the tactical things you're doing there?
So what we're trying to do is we're pulling in a number of questions from tools. Frankly, I haven't used Bloomberry. There's a number of, Moz has a ability to find questions. So does SERPstat. But we're pulling in a number of questions and we're also leveraging their internal search. So looking at what are customers actually looking for on your site and overlaying the pages that are actually getting visited. So that way we're taking people from not only just, we're not getting the traffic on the Q&A side, but how do we take that traffic and start pushing them further down the journey of what they're looking for? So it's not just focused on that ranking. It's not just focused on that traffic, but it's tying it into a conversion. So if they're looking for a particular question about a particular item, whether it's in health or in, we work on an auto mechanic site, and taking it and saying, okay, well, maybe if this doesn't answer your question, here's the next step that we can get you to make sure that whatever issue you're having gets resolved. So we're taking a lot of those Q&A and moving the customer down the funnel. And I think that's what's separating us from the people who are just throwing up lots of questions and throwing up lots of content, seeing what sticks.
How are you getting that person asking the question and then the visitor, how are you getting them to your client's sites?
So the question you're asking, sorry, is how are we getting the answers on the site, or how are we getting the traffic to those pages?
How are you getting the traffic, back to your clients' websites from these forums?
Oh, so we're having the client build the Q&A section on their own site.
Oh, internally. Oh, okay.
Internally, correct. Yeah. So every question has an individual page. We have an overall hub page. We allow users to search within it. I think in an ideal world, there would be a tool. I wish I could build it and have the resources to build a widget to allow a client to just paste it on their site. That's the best wish. But at the moment, we're encouraging clients to build this content as an extension of the rest of their content strategy. And because we see such a quick win for the customers, think about featured snippets. Q&A is obviously huge for that. And we're also looking at easy SEO wins. And Q&A, long tail terms, is much easier, especially for sites that have pretty high authority out the gate.
What are you recommending on the flip side of that when they accumulate hundreds or thousands of questions that don't get any answers, that are just now thin, low quality content? What do you do in those cases?
Well, what we're actually doing is encouraging that they have local experts or folks on staff answer the questions. Oh. We're not asking for them to build it user generated. But what we want to do is get engagement. So like having the users rate the questions. Was this helpful? Have the users comment on it, ask additional questions. So that way it increases the recency of the question. Lots of people are looking for answers to questions that are timely. So what we try to do is have an expert on staff or have them bring in external talent to answer the questions.
I think what I was leading towards a little bit there was, what if you look back 2 years later and there's a ton of unanswered questions? Do you go and clean up old questions that are low quality? Do you delete them? Do you no index them? Is there a certain approach there? Or is it really ultimately you're trying to get them answered eventually?
Yeah, we're pushing to get all the questions answered, and we're not encouraging them to post questions that are unanswered. We're pushing for a very seamless process of, okay, you have a question, let's answer it as fast as possible, 72 hours, 5 days. But oftentimes we're the ones generating the questions versus, so the majority of customers coming into the Q&A are coming in from search and asking that question in search, and the answer is provided to them versus coming and asking the question.
I see. Very interesting. Are there technical recommendations that you would have? So say somebody out there listening has a company, or they're a consultant, they want to get a company going, they want to get a Q&A going. Are there considerations that they should have for building these Q&A sections? Technical, content, community, anything at all that comes to mind that, for somebody trying this out maybe for the first time?
I think there's a really good deck out there, and we could post it probably after this, from Rob from GetStat. I believe it was the MozCon last year, and I'm sure he used the same deck in other places as well, where he talked about what are the elements that are on pages that get added to the featured snippet. What are those elements? Are they? And I think, and I'll with probably a high degree of confidence, it's ordered lists, unordered lists, tables, things like that, and also terms that he was using in the Q&A that you'd want to have surfaced, having the question in the H1, things like that. But that deck is really, really amazing and comprehensive because they're looking at so much featured snippet data. They know what data is being pulled in.
So you also mentioned in your email, in terms of this experimental stuff, experimental things around link building. I'd really love to chat about this for a minute. So do anything's come top of mind for you in regards to link building and some of this experimental stuff that you're talking about?
So for link building on our side, we're moving away from, or at least the recommendations we're moving away from is anything it's really low quality. We want to just maintain the highest quality links as possible and being very targeted. We're starting to focus on.
Can you define low quality? I'm sorry to interrupt, but just not to gloss over that. What is a low quality link to you?
Low quality link to me, and probably Google as well, is the links that are being built on blog spots. Kind of like I shy away from scholarship link building.
Even scholarship link building.
Yeah, I try to keep it link building strategy that can be long term, something that's consistent for the business. So we really like doing. I think the type of work that Ross's team does, Ross Hudgens at Siege Media.
Yeah,
I have a strong attraction towards that type of marketing tactic, which is building high fidelity content that's super applicable for the customer and doing syndication to get that content to reach as many people as possible, and leveraging that asset to boost other areas of the site, and also use it as a kind of a flavor of PR.
I see. And so, okay, so continue with your thoughts on link building and what you're doing now that we've defined low quality.
Yeah. So, there's obviously like hundreds of low quality type, PBNs and things like that. We're obviously shying away from that and
private blog networks.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is look towards the highest quality sites within that vertical. We're also doing some experiments and we're still waiting results on this experiment right now, which is we're looking at all of the links that point to 404s, especially for clients that have, massive number of backlinks. So we're looking at all of the links that are now pointing to 404 pages, and we're 301ing them to the most applicable page.
I do that too. Yep.
Yeah, and it's a great tactic
for big sites.
For big sites, exactly.
Yeah.
And we've seen some early wins, but nothing that's definitive yet. I have a school of thought that says, even if it goes to a 404 page, Google's still recognizing it as a link that's vouching for the core site. But I've never seen any documentation one way or the other on if that works or not. And we're also doing a lot of targeted link building towards these content pieces and using that to promote the rest of the site.
Is there, I would be remiss to not circle back and try to ask for some specifics as much as you can get around some of these big companies you're working for, Casper, Genius, World Market. Is there anything sort of like very specific you can hint at or tell us about link building or any SEO growth for any of these sites that you've been working with?
Yeah, so one of the clients, here's a good example, which is we're working with policygenius.com, which is a client that's in the life insurance vertical, which is super boring. There's not a lot of interesting content to write about life insurance. And these guys are doing it. They're writing interesting content about finance, life insurance, and health insurance and things like that. And they're approaching content marketing in a way that I think is resonating with customers. They've experienced 30% year over year growth on leveraging this content. And they're getting natural links pointing at the content that they're creating, and because of that, they're increasing their domain authority. They're increasing their position for a number of these terms. There was even a recent comment on Moz about them that talked about how a company like Policy Genius can rank top 10 for life insurance, where you think about some of these other brands like MetLife or any of the big
Geico?
Life insurance companies that have just been around for a billion years.
So let's dive in a little bit. So Ross Hudgens from Siege was on the show, and I know Ross very well from years ago. He talked about their process that you mentioned for building content, having these assets, having it support the rest of the site. Can you dive in a little bit more? So you said Policy Genius is leveraging content to acquire links and build their authority. What type of content are they doing? Number one, and then number two, let's tie that into how these links are being acquired.
Yeah, so I think they have a really big team. No, I don't think they have a really big team that's creating this content, and they're creating engaging content that's just not really. So if you think about life insurance, like what could you possibly write about life insurance? And they're writing about the types of questions that customers might have. They're hitting customers with the life events, speaking specifically to the tactics. I think they're doing the very standard things that most folks are doing, where they're leveraging their relationships and PR teams to push out content that will resonate with the customers and obviously be an extension to the type of work that other folks are doing. So standard kind of PR and link building, outreach, things like that.
So are you and your company doing the quote link building for Policy Genius, or this is something that they're doing on their own?
Yeah, again, just like paid search, link building is a full-time job. You look at the guys like John Cooper, those guys are building links all day. They're in that world. We don't pretend to be in that world of doing outreach all day. As a team of 5, there's no way we could sustain being a link building team. I think the focus would be nailing the high quality content and leveraging that. Because regardless, if you're going to go pursue link building, even if you're going to go on the most intense outreach schedule, what you're going to need is a piece of content or an asset that you can point to. So before you even engage a link building vendor, you're going to want a piece of content.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm pulling open their SEMrush pages report as we're speaking, and some of their top content is cat claws, cruel or safe. So
yeah, see?
They found a way to talk about cats, which automatically, when you start talking about cats or dogs or pets or anything like that, you're going to get more attention. They have a lot of cute cat photos in this post.
They sell pet insurance as well, so it obviously fits in.
Yes.
Or they don't sell their. They provide you all the different providers that you could find. But the cool thing about them also is, I even saw Tesla's posted a job for an SEO manager, but Policy Genius is also hiring a marketing team member. Very smart.
One of their top linked pages is the insurance secret that Uber doesn't want you to know. And it's very clever. I've always said that if you can piggyback on a huge company, Apple, look at all of the Apple accessories or Mac blogs and websites out there. Just like talking about Uber alone is going to get you some leverage, especially if you do it in what seems to be maybe a controversial way. So I want to make sure and just ask, are there any other SEO experiments, things that you're doing on the growth side of SEO that you'd like to touch upon, either vertically speaking, so in a certain industry, or again, with any of these particular clients that you're working with?
No experiments that I'd say are resounding success at the moment. However, I mean, Dan, you know me pretty well. I've been pretty quiet over the past 10 years on social media and kind of the speaking circuit. I think my last speaking event was probably 5 years ago, embarrassingly enough. And I'd say running my own agency, I'd love to get out there more and put myself out there more. So I'd say look for either a tweet or a blog post about some of these experiments. I'm going to be more vocal about it. And SEO has provided me a career for 10 years, and I think it's time to give back a little bit and participate in the community. So I'm excited to do that.
Can you hint at one that's maybe in the oven right now as we speak? Give us maybe a little teaser of something that, and again, you're disclaiming, you're not saying this is working or not working, but just a little idea of maybe one of these experiments.
Yeah, so one experiment that we're trying at the moment, and I'm trying to think of one that I'm willing to disclose. I think rel canonical experiment is interesting enough. So we're leveraging a lot of the internal content, blog articles and things like that. And we're experimenting, saying, you know what, especially for companies that have just built so much content and so much product and category pages, how do we actually push more authority to one centralized page instead of having a lot of very similar content on the site that's really saturated? Can we tell Google, hey, look, this is the final destination for anything about this content to elevate that page? We're running an experiment right now to evaluate that.
That's very interesting, because you often hear, and advice I give quite often is just delete old content or content that's thin or of low quality or no index. But the canonical is interesting because it's not a redirect in the browser. It's just simply hoping to pass the value to that one central page. So that's a very interesting experiment. I have not done anything like that, but it definitely has me thinking about it, because why not? It's a tag that's out there. It's a tool. Might as well test it and see what it yields.
Exactly. And another test that we're starting to put together plans for a lot of our clients is there's just a lot of rumbling about mobile index first. So how do we really get ahead of that game? So having a really tight mobile page, highly optimized, making sure that it passes all of the mobile friendliness tests and the mobile page speed tests, and kind of being out in the forefront. You look at sites out there that when you're looking at rankings, or you're looking at sites that are performing, sometimes you feel like sites have been grandfathered in just because they were first. And I'd like to reap the benefits of being grandfathered in on some of those mobile tests or mobile indexation first.
So kind of being first to market with the best mobile site when this is rolling out.
That's right. Exactly.
So one interesting thing with podcasting, because I'm recording this episode after I recorded an episode that's going to come out after this one in real life, I can predict the future. We are going to have an entire show on mobile SEO coming out 2 weeks after this one. So everyone
Awesome.
Can stick around for that. I want to talk about ZocDoc for a minute. You were at ZocDoc when I first met you. In fact, I came and visited you at the ZocDoc office. Just a question I've always wanted to ask is, how the heck did you work in such a noisy, busy, chaotic environment? When I walked in there, I was like, oh my goodness. And maybe that's just normal for New York or startup or, that whole scene. And I'm not a huge part of that. So it really was just like, how does anybody get anything done? Can you talk about that a minute? Was it just like completely, you tune it out after a while, or how do you feel about that?
I think from an outsider perspective, it's chaos, but from an insider's perspective, it's organized chaos. Listen, New York City startups are intense. That company was intense because we were just trying to grow so fast. We were hiring so aggressively. When I was there, I think I was employee number 50 or 30 or 60, something like that. And when I left, it was 550 or 600 people. So every day there's a new person, there's tons of people walking around. But I think the short answer is immediately after I left ZocDoc, I moved to Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, so I moved to Charleston for 3 years. Yeah, I went from 8 million people in New York City to 100,000 people in Charleston. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, because I just remember you worked in a cubicle with like 3 other people, and it was just like complete chaos in there. So I always wondered.
But the funny thing is, the person I worked in the cubicle with is now my business partner.
Oh, interesting. So it's funny how those relationships carry into the future. Also, is there 1 or 2 little things about ZocDoc maybe you did at the time for SEO wise? And of course, it's 2017, not 2012, so these might not apply now, but any takeaway from something that might have helped move the needle for them SEO wise?
Yeah, I mean, we did Q&A there. I mean, listen, there's not a lot of changes. We had folks would ask questions and doctors would answer them. We built a network of doctors to answer the questions. Got millions of visitors every single month for some obscure medical questions. We had on a site that's very similar to Expedia or Zillow or Thumbtack. We had really intense internal linking for millions of pages, right? At one point, there was over 700 million pages indexed, because you think of every insurance, specialty, location combination, all of those were pages. So you need to ensure that Google is able to crawl all of those things. And then also when you think about link building, I mean, in those days we were doing a lot of different things that are probably then what is quote unquote the normal common practice, right? We were doing things like widgets, and we were doing things like sponsored content and things like that. Whereas now they've probably moved away from those types of tactics. And it was just intense site, very fast moving, tons of content. But the most I learned there was how to create a process so that way you can be proactive. So what I mean by that is when you have so many moving parts and so many pages and so many developers touching the code, what you want to ensure is that you're ahead of any types of changes that are being made, and you're part of a QA process. So whenever working with big clients, if you can institutionalize a QA process, what you won't find is, oh no, our traffic dropped 20%. Why? You're way ahead of it. You're involved in the process. And so that's probably the best lesson I learned at Zoc.
One thing you've touched on a few times now is internal linking, hinting upon site architecture. How do you analyze or begin to wrap your head around the internal linking of a site that large? Are you crawling it in pieces? Like, what are you actually doing to find the action items to improve the internal linking?
And we're basically pulling the whole story together. We're looking at our performance within sections of the site. So, and tools like GetStat or ZoomRank and the rankings, you'll see, even if you go, I think you wrote a post about the best ranking tools, right? So yeah. You can leverage these tools and you can build categories, and you can see performance by categories on your site. And you can start that way and understand, okay, why isn't this section performing? Is it too far from the root? Are we not sending in enough links? Are we neglecting it? Whatever it is. So the way that we start approaching it is we have a very, pragmatic approach to it, or logical approach to it of, we want to look at the site in a way that we want our customers to discover it, and we want it to be easy as possible for Google to crawl it. I think a really good post, Dan, is there was a recent post on Moz from one of the guys at Distilled who wrote about faceted navigation. Mm-hmm. And he just talked it in the most simple way of how easy it is to discover, how easy it would be for Google to discover content. And he was making simple suggestions like using breadcrumbs and leveraging schema markup on those breadcrumbs. And so it's just really organizing the content into categories and making it accessible for Google.
I tell you, breadcrumbs is like step number 1 for big sites. If they do not have breadcrumbs, that is like the first thing I tell them, add breadcrumbs. It immediately makes your architecture so much better.
Exactly. You're 100% right.
So I wanted to ask and shift a little bit to talking about hiring. I think a lot of people find this interesting because a lot of listeners are either maybe hiring themselves eventually, whether in-house or running their own agency, or they're on the other end of that. They're trying to get hired. So and I know you've done some of this through probably screening people at ZocDoc and whatnot, and now in your own company. So what do you look for when hiring an SEO? Are there important like attributes, personality traits, skill sets? What do you look for in an SEO?
I just look for hunger. I look for somebody who's naturally curious. We're going to be moving fast. We're going to be working on problems that we've never faced before, things that just for some reason you kind of scratch your head and say, does this have an answer? And I want somebody who's excited about finding out the answer. And I think that's the first thing I look for in a hire.
How can you tell that somebody has that? Because it's not on their resume. Like first line, I'm excited to find problems. How can you tell that somebody has that trait?
I ask a lot of questions about challenges that I see, or what are things that you've observed when browsing a site, or anything that you've worked on in your career, and how did they get to resolution? What was that process like? That's one question. And then the second question is, and I hate to bring back the same point again, but I love somebody who's a tinkerer, somebody who's used a lot of tools, who's mashed up different APIs or mashed up, because you think about BuzzSumo, like how easy it is to punch in a URL and find out the number of social shares. The way that I used to do it was I used to use that SEO tool set, the add-on for Excel. I used to scrape it in Screaming Frog, the whole site, paste it, and then pull in all the social shares that way. And then I was like, oh, this is slow. Why don't I do this and pull in XHTML or one of those.
Import XML in Google Docs?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And you can do it that way in Google Sheets, right? And so I want somebody who's gone through that process and gets excited about, even if they try it. I get excited if they try it, even if they don't get it right.
So that's a really good point, and that's a good way to tell, is just dig and ask questions. I have here in my notes, I'm not sure why I have this under the hiring section, but I'm just going to throw it in here kind of randomly. Mike King interviewed you in his office when he was doing that lunch interview series years ago in 2013. You said, and I have your quote here, content development was what you would recommend in 2013. Maybe you were talking in context of what to do primarily for an SEO activity. You hinted at this earlier, but is that still true today? Is content development really what you think is one of the top priority SEO strategies now? I have no idea why that.
It's kind of funny. Yeah. You're like, hey, here's what you said in 2013. So it kind of catches me off guard. I'm like, man, I said that. Good for me. I think that's actually good advice.
I don't remember what I said yesterday, so no worries.
So I really think that content development, if you get the nuts and bolts down, if you get your on-site in order, if you do all of those things, I'd say go all in on content development. Whether you do it internally or you pull in an external team, go all in. If you're not able to go all in from developing content, don't do it. Focus on another strategy. Just be really good at content development, or don't. That's my position.
That's what I say too. And I wrote a post years ago on Moz, I believed that if people were not receiving comments or engagement on their blog, to just not blog. And I got a lot of negative feedback for that thought. I also want to ask, do you get inquiries, and this is my segue into my second sponsor, do you get inquiries for people looking for SEO that you turn away because they're not a good match or whatever it is? And how do you deal with that? Do you send them somewhere else? What do you do when somebody wants SEO and they're not a match?
Yeah, I really try to leverage a network of people that I think are good fits. So I always look for people that complement the type of work that I do. Like I mentioned, Ross. Ross and I, we have a monthly call. I kind of share, even down to hiring. I share questions with him I look at somebody like him and I get, as an analog business of, he's had such great success. He has a big team. I look towards him for support there. And same thing with inbound requests of, maybe Ross is a good fit, or I'll pass it on to another company. Like Wallaroo Media is great. Those guys are based in Utah. I'll send some leads that way that might not be necessarily a great fit for me. So.
Yeah, this happens to me. So a lot of times I get people looking for local SEO. And my second sponsor is somebody I've known for years, Phil Rozak at Local Visibility System. Do you know Phil?
I don't know.
He's localvisibilitysystem.com. He's kind of a nearby neighbor, an hour away from me here in Massachusetts. And he's the first person I just hit forward and I'm like, Phil, do you want this? Because he is the best, if not like top 3, one of the best local SEOs that I know. And he's been on this podcast, I think episode 5 or 3 or something. We should bring him back on the show. But we were emailing one day and I mentioned the podcast and he said, hey, can I sponsor the podcast? I said, sure, why not? So I want to just point the listeners to Phil's website where he has, I mean, the one thing that jumps out at me, we talked about hiring, is I also, and this might just be my personality, but I would look for people's presence online and what content have they created in the hiring process. Or when just scoping people out, like have they written a blog post that just completely blows me away, or given a presentation that's really remarkable. And I think Phil's content, if you go check out, he has like the definitive local search citations list. He's got a lot of guides and things like that. So for anybody wanting to leverage local SEO, which by the way is not just local companies, but people that have any company, because all of these local SEO strategies and facets really apply to all SEO. Go check out localvisibilitysystem.com and say hello to Phil. Tell him I said hi and I sent you. So Corey, my phone's ringing. I like that people know that I don't edit, so I'm going to let that just play for a second. How do you follow and keep up with the SEO news and trends and developments and Google algorithms? How do you follow that stuff?
Yeah, so I'm using Nuzzle right now to pull out all of the news articles outside of Twitter to avoid the noise of politics. I'm using that a lot, and I'm staying in touch with a lot of people who I know are doing SEO. Right, I try to stay away from the people who write about it or speak about it and aren't actually in the weeds. I want, that's the point of speaking to Ross. I want to know what things that they're seeing and observing. And then I'm just very, very heads down on all of our clients, and I'm in the analytics, I'm in Search Console, and we're doing those experiments and we're trying to see, what's actually moving the needle and what's not.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned having your head down and working, and then you mentioned that a few minutes ago. Do you feel like that's hurting you in any way? I mean, I see one common path is people are out there blogging and tweeting and content marketing as a way to drive more SEO business for themselves. It doesn't seem like this has hurt you at all. You've gotten some really nice clients, so you've hinted at wanting to get back to that. Do you feel like that you've missed out on anything by not being online as much?
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the notoriety of being sort of bigger in the SEO community. Probably, I'd say I have a little doubt about it. But that being said, I do try to connect on a lot of very individual levels with a lot of people in the space. I mean, I do go to MozCon every year. I'm probably one of the quieter ones there, but I do try to participate probably on a smaller level. I don't necessarily need to be the loudest guy on Twitter. And I think I do have a little bit of just like angst, right? Like when you put yourself out there, you're being judged by your peers, and it's just a challenging or difficult thing to experience. And I'm generally pretty shy. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't tweet that often. And if I do, I try to ensure that I add value, right? I'm not trying to have just a goofy conversation.
Right.
But I think this is new for me. This is something that it's a personal goal for me, is to put myself out there more and just see what happens. So I'm not sure if I missed out yet, but I definitely will. I'll learn some more now.
So I also want to bring up, and this is something you seemed also shy about when you talked about it, I believe, with Mike. You were also a magician, and you said that it doesn't give you cool points, and you're smiling now. It's okay. I was in marching band. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of us here get it as SEOs. There are a lot of people that have done things that don't give them cool points. But on a serious note, though, I did want to ask, do you draw any connections between magic and SEO, like reading psychology or figuring out where people's attention is going, or is that just completely separate in your mind?
Probably magic is separate. It was a hobby. It was something I did a lot those days. And I did a lot of tricks to Mike before that. he too came to the ZocDoc office. And I'd say though, but I do play a lot of billiards on a personal level. I play a lot of pool. And I try to compete in a professional level or even just a high amateur level or high level amateur playing. And I see a lot of correlation in pool and also in poker in SEO, which is it's a game of percentages. And SEO is just like that. It's a game of percentages. And so when you're looking at pool and you're looking 3 shots ahead, in SEO, you're looking at 3 shots ahead. You're looking at nailing the technical to move to content, from content to link building. So as you start putting all of those pieces together, and as you add more elements, you reduce your percentages or increase your percentages. So you need to be planning. It's crazy that we're talking about this, but yeah.
It's one thing I do tell the clients because I'm always giving them content ideas based off of keywords. And the expectation I try to set is for every 10 posts that you do, even if we really target the keyword and the topic very well, expect 2 or 3 of those to really blow up. And there it's a little bit like a sales percentage in a way, or a conversion percentage, where you have to some degree, execute and publish a certain volume to then get the benefits from that percentage. Do you see the same thing as well? As that? You're nodding there a little bit. So is that something that resonates with you also?
Yeah, I think there's either a podcast or a post I saw written by Tim Ferriss, which is he's pretty, I'd say, he's by no means active in the SEO community, but it's a consideration for him, of course. And one of the things he mentioned was when he writes a blog post, he doesn't expect to get paid off for at least a year. You know, he knows that his post, like I think he has a kettlebell swing workout post.
Yep.
He didn't see traffic on that post until a year later.
Yep.
And I think that quote was actually from a number of years ago, and I think it's still applicable today. The industry and space hasn't changed all that much.
So I want to ask one last little area of questions here, because we've hinted around a little bit. And if you don't mind, Corey, I'm just fascinated by this. If you have another 5 minutes or so, do you consider yourself, by the strict definition, an introvert? It sounds like that's sort of where you place yourself. Or am I reading that wrong? Do you actually get energy from being around people?
Yeah, no, I'm an extrovert in person, but I'm an introvert online. I'm just a little bit shyer. And I think it's sometimes, and we'll get a little personal here, which is you see a lot of your peers doing a lot of really great work, and sometimes you have self-doubt, right? And so even I've been doing this for, I think I got my first SEO job in 2004. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of great success, and I've obviously messed up a lot along the way. And personally, I think putting yourself out there on the internet it's forever. That's a big word. You know, it's on the internet once, it's there forever. You'll even notice I deleted all my tweets, right? You just get a little nervous. So yeah, I think on the internet, I'm a little bit more cautious.
That's funny. I think the PR'd version of everyone, like, you know, the classic, like, everyone's posting all the fun and happy moments on Facebook that happens to them. I don't have a Facebook account either, so I kind of resonate with that. But everyone has these more negative, doubtful things going on beneath the surface. And I think it's funny when I see people, like, I'm not going to name names, but somebody posts a screenshot on Twitter and they spin it like a humble brag, like, oh, fun to grow traffic, you know, 9,000% or whatever. And like, you know, that to me is always interesting as well, is because then I look at that and I feel the same way. I mean, to be very transparent and honest as well, I see these success stories, and then it makes you go, well, you know, am I doing good work? Am I good? Do I actually know what I'm doing? Like, everyone else seems to be doing way better than I am, like, at least in the PR'd version. But where I wanted to bring all of this at the very end here, as we wrap up in a second, was I'm curious what motivates you in the SEO work that you do. Because for me, I'm going to very transparently admit I've always been motivated by growing an audience, because I was a musician. That's how I look at the world. I want to, you know, eventually be on stage and speaking and be in front of people, but that's what motivates me. That's what gets me excited. So I love doing the SEO work I do to give me material maybe 5 years down the road from now that I can talk about in front of an audience in 5 years, but it doesn't seem like that's truly what motivates you. It sounds like it's something that you know that you should or have to, or maybe, should be doing in the future. But is your motivation like seeing the traffic go up and to the right? Like what's kind of driving what you do with SEO?
Yeah, it's something that I just have a strong curiosity of. I'm naturally tracking rankings of sites that aren't mine. I have that just like, I feel like it's a game. It's a puzzle.
So you track rankings on sites you don't work on?
Correct.
Interesting. Can you give me an example?
I'm tracking verticals like things that I find really interesting are artificial intelligence, electric bikes, tons of travel. I love the travel space. And I look at volatility in categories, flights and hotels, things like that. And I even have like little goofy things like I think backpacks are like an interesting. I like REI strategy. I like the content that they're doing. So I just track a lot of different terms, and I kind of see what people are doing. And if I see a site pop, then I'm naturally investigating of what are they doing? What are they doing that's differently? What am I missing?
Are you
I think it's a puzzle.
Are you using GetStat to do that?
Yeah, so I use a number of providers. I use GetStat on a client level. I'm using SERPWoo for the competitive analysis. I like SERPWoo because you can visualize the top 100 results, and you can pull out a viewpoint of 90 days, 180 days, and you can actually see the trend line of their rankings compared to the other 100 results.
Wow.
So and you get daily alerts on SERPWoo. That's kind of nice, up and down. And then I'm also using ZoomRank as well. I think ZoomRank's a great tool, and so I'm using all three.
I think this is a great way to wrap up this interview, and I didn't plan on going it in this direction, but like the fact that you just do that, and this is where you derive enjoyment and fun and curiosity, like that is very cool to me. I don't do that at all. Just to be totally like, I would have never thought of to like just track rankings for a site I'm not working on, which I think is a very interesting thing, just to be aware of those differences. That's not what's driving me in the SEO work that I do, but I just think that's so cool that you do that. So I think with that, I'm going to hit play here on the wrap up music, and we'll start wrapping up in a second. But Corey, despite being quiet online, tell people where at least they can stalk you, whether it be Twitter, LinkedIn, your company site, all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can email me at corey@factorialdigital.com. You can see my website, which is a few pages, factorialdigital.com. And look at me on Twitter. It's Corey Eulas, CoreyEulas. And
you mentioned you will be at MozCon this year?
Most likely I will. Every year I'm always like, and then I always go.
I really wish I could go this year. I haven't been since the one time I went in 2012, but we'll see what happens. Well, Corey, thank you so much. It's been a really fun discussion with you. Thank you for following up with a second email and getting on the show. I really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Dan.